Folks, in my last video I didn't explain to you really about why final drives make such a difference. So this short video I'm going to explain to you why final drives matter. Well folks, here we are again. Yesterday I did a video about the diff dilemma that we had, but I didn't explain really why on earth it matters. So I wrote a piece on the website at e46racer.com if you're interested about why final drives matter. And it's all about converting the engine torque mostly into forward motion. Changing the final drive will it'll limit the top speed of the car. That's the expense bit, but what you gain back is the acceleration out of the corners. Of course, most racetracks they aren't designed to be flat out. You know, max speed takes you forever. It's not the Mulsanne straight, and even then they put the chicane in it after a while because the cars were just too damn fast. So most racetracks in the UK, you're never going to see much more, certainly this kind of horsepower of car, but 250 brake or thereabouts. You're not going to see much more than about 120, maybe 125 at the end of some of the longest straights. The rev limiter has been raised on this car from 6,500 to 7,000, but it doesn't really develop any more power up there. It starts to tail off a little bit, so it's there just in case you want to hang on to a gear into a corner, not necessarily for outright pace. So that's the reason for raising the limiter on that one. I did a few calculations just to give you some sort of idea. The standard final drive in a manual 330 Ci is 2.93. And I'll cut to another little video here. So here we have the differential out of an X3. It's still a 188k differential, and it's used as a backup. For the 330s, they made a 293 final drive, which is in the manual. They made a 343 final drive, which is in the automatics. However, BMW are very good at reusing a lot of their stuff. And this differential is out of a diesel X3, believe it or not. What is different is this drive shaft flange and the output flanges. These just knock out. They're little on little circlips. And they just pull out with a puller or a bit of a slide hammer. And on this one, it's got a nut on the end, and it's just taken out with an impact wrench. So it's really easy to put one of these into a 330. Remove these, replace them with the 330 ones, remove that, and replace that, and the gubbins is all in. Problem is, this is an open diff. It doesn't have a limited slip differential, so this is a backup for us. But essentially the way a differential works is the engine's attached to this bit in the drive shaft, 373 ratio. So this rotates 3.73 times for every time that this rotates once. And if you increase the ratio, it means this has got to spin faster, and this has got to spin faster for the same output on this one, or for the same revs, this rotates slower. So what it means that you get better acceleration out of a car, and acceleration equals lap times, and that's the reason why we do that. When you do the calculations, it's very simple to do. What you need to do is find out the rolling radius of the tire and find out how many times the tire rotates in a mile. There's a great little website called tiresizecalculator.com, and for our dry setup, 235 40/17s, the tire or the wheel will rotate 828 revs per mile. Sorry about that, got noisy dogs next door. So we know how many times the engine rotates, and we know the differential ratio, so we can tell for a particular gear. And final drive on these things is a 1-to-1. So the fifth gear, for every one revolution of the engine, the drive shaft will rotate once as well. So you need to know the gearbox ratios as well. However, 1-to-1 works for me. 7,000 RPMs on the engine equals 7,000 RPMs on the actual drive shaft. So you know that the wheel rotates 828 revolutions per mile. The engine revs at 7,000 RPMs, so that's revs per minute. Multiply that by 60, you get 420,000 revs per hour. That's important. And then you divide that by the differential ratio to find out how many wheel revs per hour you're going to get. So in the case of the 373 diff, which we're changing to, it's 112,600 revs. For the 293 standard ratio, it's 143. 300-ish. There's a bit of calculation to do and all the rest of it, but essentially what it means is you divide the wheel revs per hour by the wheel revolutions per mile, essentially, to get your miles per hour. So the calculations work out at standard ratio in this car, 7,000 RPMs in fifth gear. It's geared for 173 miles an hour. Now, aerodynamics are going to take off over much sooner than that. It's not going to achieve that, so it's all wasted. So what we do is we limit the top speed on it, and the 373 ratio just happens to be about 135 miles an hour. It's about 10 miles an hour more than we need. However, always nice to have that little bit of a buffer. So that's the reason for doing it. It's a reason why tractors can pull massive loads because of gearing. They've got small-ish engines, diesel engines, and the torque enables them to pull massive loads, all because of gear ratios. What it essentially means is that the engine finds it easier to push this car along. We'll actually probably use more gears in riding around the track. At the minute, Silverstone with the standard drive on this was 2 gears, third and fourth. Didn't even sniff fifth at the end of the straights, and that's really what we want to do. Maybe even in the slow corners, we might be able to achieve a seconds perhaps. Certainly the brands at the hairpin at Vale. So I hope that explains to you why changing the final ratio actually makes a difference in a race car, and why pretty much all of the competitive cars actually do it. It's not simply because you want to add any extra work to your day. It's just as a simple law of physics. If you can make the engine work easier and increase the acceleration of a car, you reduce your lap times, and it really does make a difference. Final drives do matter.